Welcome back, Chess Box Worldwide, to an epic showdown between two titans of East African chess. Woman FIDE master Amoko Ivy of Uganda's CNHS club faces off against woman FIDE master Joyce Nyaruai representing Chiroka Chess Club. The rivalry between these two is massive, and for a good reason. On the white side, we have Ivy Claire Amoko. She became the first woman FIDE master in all of East Africa back in 2014. As a long-standing Olympiad for Uganda and the lawyer off the board, she is a powerhouse both strategically and professionally. She even sits on the Constitutional Commission of FIDE. Across the board is Joyce Nyaruai, a prominent Kenyan woman FIDE master, a multiple-time Kenyan national ladies champion, and a force in regional events like Rabushenyi Memorial. She's not just a player, but a FIDE developmental instructor representing strong Chiroka Chess Club. This game, a close Sicilian, was a classic battle of wits. This is the center of African chess. Before we dive into action, don't forget to smash that subscription button, hit like and drop a comment to support the channel and our coverage of African talent. Let's get into the game. And in the white pieces, the first woman FIDE master of East Africa, Amoko Ivy, opened the game with 1 e4, and the Kenyan star woman FIDE master Joyce Nyaruai, a multiple-time Kenyan national ladies champion, opened the game with c5, the Sicilian defense, knight c3, the close Sicilian, g6, and after f4, bishop g7, d3, knight c6, we see knight f3, d6, bishop e2, knight f6, short castling from Ivy, bishop d7, h3, stopping a knight or bishop jumps, queen b6. Ivy went on and played knight f4, but however, e5 should have been considered. For example, after e5, knight g8, f4, d takes e5, f5 hitting on the queen, queen c7, f takes e5, knight takes e5, s6. In case of b6 with bishop f4, pinning the knight against the queen, knight takes f3, bishop f3, and I can tell you this would be better for Ivy. But however, after queen b6, she played knight f4, and we see queen c7. In this position, c4 should have been considered, but she played knight c3, knight d4, knight takes d4, c takes d4, and in this position we see knight b1. b5 should have been considered. For example, after b5, we could see queen d2 followed by short castling, but after knight b1, she played rook c8, and we see c4, d takes c3, en passant, knight takes c3, bishop c6, bishop e3 should have been considered, taking control of this diagonal, but however she played bishop d2, and we see queen b6, checking and winning the pawn on b2, king h1, queen takes b2, and in this position, rook b1 should have been considered, but she played rook c1, short castling from Joyce, bishop f3, we see knight d7, rook b1 finally, queen a3, rook b3, queen s6, and in this position, she played bishop c1. Bishop takes c3 should have been considered, but she played knight c5, trying to hit on the rook and also hit on the pawn which is on d3. Rook f3, we see queen takes d3. Knight d5 should have been considered, but she played queen takes d3, knight takes d3, we see bishop e3, s6, knight d5, bishop takes d5, e takes d5. The knight on d3 is hanging. She played knight c5, but however, knight b2 should have been considered. For example, after knight b2, we could see g4, knight c4, double attack on the rook and the bishop, rook d3, knight takes e3, rook takes e3, and after rook e8, defending the pawn, rook b1, hitting on the pawn, rook c7, g5, b5, and after bishop g4, at least this would be a better game for Joyce. After pawn takes d5, she played knight c5, and now we see rook b1, rook c7, defending the pawn, and planning to go ahead and pile the two rooks. King g1, knight d7. In this position, king f1 should have been considered, but she played rook coming to b3, b5, defending the pawn, rook f3, rook c3, requesting for an exchange. In case you go ahead and take the pawn, then the bishop which is on e3 will be falling. Rook takes c3, rook takes c3, and after rook c1, she played the best move in the position. She played b4, king f1, rook b8, and after king e2, you see rook b5. Now, the rook is going to be looking at all the squares king d3, we see knight f6. So now the rook and the knight, king c4, defending the pawn and also putting an eye on the rook. e6, and after d takes e6, f takes e6, Ivy played bishop c6. But however, rook d1 should have been considered. For example, after rook d1, we could have seen d5 check, and after king b3, knight d7, bishop e2, knight c5 check, bishop takes c5, rook takes c5, king f4, f5, h4, king f7. At least this would be a playable game. But however, after pawn takes, she played bishop c6, hitting on the rook, rook f5. Now the rook is attacking the pawn which is on a2. f4 should have been considered. For example, after f4, can't play en passant because the bishop which is on c3 would be falling. So you could say d4 check, and after king d3, knight e4, bishop b6, rook c5, bishop takes c5, knight takes c5 check, and after king c2, king f7, rook d1, d4. This still is winning for black, but still a fighting game, and Ivy could still have some chances. But however, after rook a5, she played rook c2, defending the pawn, d5 from Joyce. Even play king b3 because of the immediate rook a3 and could be checkmate. That's why she tried queen d3, king f7, bishop d4, requesting for an exchange, knight e4 instead, and after bishop goes to b6, rook a3, king goes to e2, moving away from the discovered check, bishop goes back to f6, bishop goes to b7, knight c3 check, and after king d2, Joyce played b3, hitting on the rook. Ivy went on and played rook takes c3. But however, pawn takes b3 should have been considered, and in case of rook takes b3, double attack on the two bishops, then bishop f5, trying also to put an eye on the knight which is here on c3, knight e4 check, king d1, rook takes b7, rook c6, d4, king e2, bishop e7, rook takes s6, knight c5. At least this would be a playable game for both sides. But however, after b3, Ivy played rook takes c3, and now we see bishop takes c3, king takes c3. In this position, Joyce played the best move in the position. She played pawn takes a2, and in this position, after move 47, Ivy Amoko, woman FIDE master Ivy, resigned the game and Joyce became victorious. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in your games.